Today, we talk the last season, General Manager. This is the grandparents phase, so stay tuned.
Church. Family. Theology. News. Entertainment. Evangelism. If it's Christian, then we're talking about it. This is the Mike Charleston Podcast.
All right, welcome to the Mike Charleston Podcast. This is Mike Charleston, and I'm joined today with Sarah, my wife.
Hello, everybody.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Well, good. We are going to be finishing off our Seasons of Life series. This is part 4 called The General Manager, or what we would call the Statesman. But so we're going to get into that today. But before we do all that, we're going to tell you a little bit about our week. And our week has not been very long because we have changed our recording days. And so today we're actually recording on a Friday. So for you that are wanting to email and all that, you might have to do that before the weekend. Just a note. So anyway, what's been going on with you, babe?
Well, we got to celebrate our producer, or whatever Josh was called. We celebrated his birthday this week.
That's right. Josh was now 17. So yeah, if you're looking for a producer, he's not quite ready yet because he's doing Mars. So anyway, no, that's he turned 17. So yeah, we had his birthday, and so anyway, we really haven't had much going on. It's been raining, it's been cold, it's been miserable here, except for the one day when everyone else was getting snowed in. It was about 69 degrees.
Something like that, and
it
raining.
It was raining a little bit, but it was fine. It was good.
Yeah.
But it's winter in Louisiana. It's not going to be, it's winter everywhere, but except for the South Hemisphere.
Right. Yeah.
It is. So anyway, no, but that's what's been going on. We got back from the Grimm's house last week, and I know this is going to shock everybody. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But the Grimms are Larry and Pam, friends of the show, on the podcast every once in a while. They are shocked at how picky of an eater I am.
That's shocking.
I don't think I'm as picky as you think I am, but you think I'm pretty picky. Basically, my rules are if it's green, then I'm probably not going to eat it, unless it's fresh. I don't mind fresh broccoli or fresh lettuce or fresh,
Not
Skittles.
too many green things make you happy.
No, not too many green things. Not too many vegetables. Not too many fruits either. I'm not a fruits and vegetables guy.
But I find you just don't really get excited about too many foods. Like most things that I think are really good, you're like, it was all right. It was all right.
It was all right.
It was all right.
There's a few things. But what I do get excited for, we actually had tonight.
Oh, I was like, what did we have that was so exciting?
Well, it's not really that exciting, but it's hamburgers. I love hamburgers.
Yeah, okay.
And you grill up some grilled onions and get some mayo, mustard on there, tomato, but we didn't have tomatoes. And you get on a nice burger. They're very good. French fries with it. I'm a sucker for that. So yeah,
It was good.
I did have green on it though. I put some lettuce.
Yeah,
okay. I put some lettuce
good
on
for
it.
you. There's your vegetables, huh?
So no, if you know me at all, yes, I am a meats and potatoes type person. I did grow up in Indiana. I do like corn.
Yeah, but when you say meat and potatoes, I think a lot of people think of like a good pot roast, and you don't like that.
That doesn't make any sense.
I know it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. No, what doesn't make sense is pot roast. Grind that thing up and make a hamburger, or cut it up into steaks and have a steak. But, having pot roast.
But people like variety. So like even something like meatloaf, you would think it's meat, potatoes you can have with it, but you don't like that either.
Anything with the word loaf in it is probably not going to be, unless it's bread, I'm not going to like it. Don't name anything loaf and expect me to like it. Anyway, so that's obviously how boring of a week we've had if we're discussing what we had for supper today, hamburgers. I love hamburgers, any kind of hamburger. Even McDonald's burgers, even though that's pushing it. That is pushing it.
That is pushing
I don't even know if we can call that hamburger at this point. So anyway, there is one other thing that we need to talk about. I forgot about. Our daughter, who evidently is a lot like I am, according to you.
Yeah, pretty much.
She's making a movie. And she's already made a little short movie. Now she's making another short movie, but it's going to be a little bit better, I'm hoping, quality-wise.
Yeah, that's what she's hoping for. It should be, I think the last one was about 5 minutes, and this one should be about 20.
The other one was like 15 minutes. What are you talking about, babe?
Okay, well, whatever. This one's going to be about 20 minutes.
It's going to be a little bit longer, but and better quality, and she's putting a little bit more money into it. Well, we have a video. If you're watching on YouTube, we'll put the link below. If you're listening to us on our podcast, why don't you look down in the description? We'll put the link there too. You may not be able to press it. I don't know how that'll work, but just go there, find it. We'll go to Facebook or wherever. We'll have the link. But anyway, she made a video explaining of what she's doing, and evidently she changes into a different person when the mic is on her and the camera is on her.
I don't know if she changes into a different person, but I thought she did really well. I felt like she kind of came alive with it a little bit.
She does come alive, but we did take a personality test, and we did match. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, that's Rebekah. She is wanting to she wants to direct and make Christian films for right now. So that's exciting. It's fun. I was a part of one. We've talked about that way back months ago. But if you want to see that one too, we'll put the link to that one too. And but anyway, she has a GoFundMe account, and we hate to beg for money, but we're begging for money. And she needs some money to help. She's putting a lot of her own money in this, but it would be nice to have people that believe in her to help her out and encourage people to do these kind of projects. So that's Rebekah. Yeah. So check that out. So I don't know. Why don't we get out of here, birthday boy, and then we'll come back.
You're listening to the Mike Charleston podcast.
All right, we are back, and we're going to do emails first before we get into our main topic of the day. And we did get an email, which, by the way, the consultant, if you're out there listening and watching, I know you emailed us something at one point, and I saw it, and I thought this would make a good podcast. I lost it. I have no idea. So if you can find it in your sent stuff, send it to me again. And Isaac, I know you sent me something, but I think we kind of covered that here in a little bit. Well, anyway, this comes from Nathaniel. And Nathaniel, I don't know if you want me to read it on air, but he sent it to the email box. So, which, by the way, if you want to email and make a comment, be a part of the show, or ask a question or something like that, but even just a comment like Nathaniel did here, email us at talk@fellowshipofbelievers.org. That's talk@fellowshipofbelievers.org. And he says, just a quick question. Why is only half of your face showing in the podcast profile? So if you're going to the podcast, and maybe Josh will have the picture up here, what it actually looks like, it's not exactly half my face. It's kind of like that. It's like 3/4 of my face, but that's a good question, actually, Nathaniel. The
Is
reason
that because it's your better half?
it is my best side. I went like that a little bit. No, I don't know. When you're designing, it's called design, and if I put my head completely on there, then the text, I'd have to move the text somewhere else, or I'd have to make my head smaller. And I decided just to cut off part of my ear and eye and whatever. It's just what I did. I don't know. But there's no real reason. It wasn't because I was using a bad picture and my ear was cut off or something like that. It was just what we did. So that's that part of the question. You said also this podcast has been an encouragement, especially being at school for the first 4 days of the week, and it's a good boost. Well, I appreciate that, Nathaniel. I hope that other people are enjoying it, and I hope you at least we give you something to think about.
Yeah.
I hope, I know everyone out there doesn't agree, but I hope that we at least challenge you. We get you to think about some things, and maybe eventually you'll agree with us because we're right. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it is good to give people something to think about. I know for my sister, who's a listener, she said that she really likes it, even though she doesn't always agree with us, but it at least makes her think, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is. And I know I listen to other podcasts and other little things here and there, and I don't always agree with the people I like, but they give me some things to think about, chew on, and eventually I might agree with them. I don't know. But it's not about agreeing. We're here to have this discussion, and that's why we want you to participate in the emails and give us what you think.
Oh, come on. I want to know what you think.
I want to know what you think. But yeah, that's. Thank you for the email, Nathaniel. If you want to email, please email and just give us a comment. It doesn't have to be a long question. Doesn't have to be complicated. It could be just as simple as, "Hey, man, this really encourages me." We like to hear that. I know people tell me that, they text me and all that, but it doesn't come on the email. We need to get it on the email. So anyway, thanks a lot. So after that, we'll just get on out of here, and we will come back and we'll finish talking on the Seasons of Life Part 4.
The Mike Charleston Podcast. The Mike Charleston Podcast.
All right, we are back. And speaking of movie making and video making, Joshua and I have been spending all day editing a wedding video that we are doing for friends, and it's fun, but it's a lot of work, especially this one. There's a lot of bridesmaids, and anyway, but it's fun. I think it'll turn out all right. We're only maybe halfway done. I don't know, but anyway, that's for another time. This week we are still part of talking about the Seasons of Life, Part 4. This is the general manager. So we have moved from the training camp, which was 0 to 20, and then the starting lineup, which was 20 to 40.
Yep.
And now the coaches phase was last week, and that is where we are. We're coaches now. Woo! And then we move into the general manager's position, which is 60 to 80 plus. This one was
until you die.
That's
much.
right, basically until you croak. But this is we didn't know when to break this up to 60 to 80 or 60 to 90. People are living a little longer maybe, but you got the idea. 60 to onward. And I believe this is this phase right here is the most neglected. And you'll understand when we get into this. This is the one that has been most misunderstood, and we don't appreciate this phase of life.
Definitely the least appreciated for sure.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And so we've gone through the different phases. This is the final one. This is God's way of grandparenting, basically. By the time you get to the 60 to 80, you should be on your way to being grandparents. Life has definitely slowed down. Now, I don't speak from experience. Once again, I'm not near this phase yet. I'm only 45, so I think I am. Yeah. And so I got a little ways to go before I'm at this phase. So if we're following the sports theme here, we've gotten to the training camp, which was the high school, college, draft. You're getting drafted into the pros, right? And then you're in the starting lineup. You're the starting quarterback, and you're playing for the next 20 years. You're Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. I don't know. I'm not a big football guy. But anyway, and then after your playing career is over, you move into the coaching, where now you're showing the other people how to do it and helping them along. And then what happens after, if you know anything about sports, you have the guy that is like the president or the general manager, depending on which sport you're talking about. His job is to oversee. You get the hint where I'm going with this. He's an overseer at this point. He oversees the things that are going on in day-to-day operations. He's making sure the coach is doing what he's doing. He's making sure that the starting, the players are doing what they're supposed to. He oversees everything. He's not in the public as much, maybe. He's doing a lot of things behind the scenes, but his job is extremely important. You have a bad general manager on your team, you're not going to win very much, because it's part of your organization and in your family and in your structure of life where you are at 60 to 80. This is a very interesting time. Now, I'm not there yet. You're not there yet.
No, but I am curious. I have a question.
Already?
Yeah, already.
That's not even part of your notes.
Okay. Well, no, but I'm obviously not into the sports world too much. I'm, as you found out today again, I just don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to sports. But in the sports world, are general managers generally 60 and above?
So yes, okay. That's a good point, because it does follow most things in life too. You generally don't see young general managers. Okay. They're getting younger and younger, but that's society, and we'll talk about that. But generally speaking, these are people who have done this for a while. They've either dealt with contract issues, they're lawyers, they're people who've been around the sport for a long time, and they just know every aspect of it. Where a player usually doesn't go from being a player to a general manager. It usually takes a couple steps. It's not perfect. This is not a perfect thing, but generally speaking, yes, they are definitely older. Okay. So yeah, that was your question.
That was my question.
All right. So hopefully by now you have gained a lot of wisdom. You're willing to give back. This is the phase where you are strictly a giver at this point. There's not much left for you to learn. Not to say that you can't learn. Obviously, you're a human. You should be learning. This is the phase, especially in the latter part. It is strictly, as long as your faculties are good and you remember, you should be constantly giving back, figuring out how to give of yourself completely, because you're about to go. And everyone here on this planet needs all the wisdom, all the advice, all the knowledge that you have. You need to pass that on in some way. And I know that you want to talk about that song way later, but I'm gonna cover it right now. There's a song by I'm not even sure who it is. Casting Crowns. Is it?
Yeah, I think it is.
I don't think it's Third Day. I think it's Casting Crowns, and the song is called Only Jesus, and it really irritates me. I know that sounds terrible if the song is Only Jesus, which I get what they're trying to say, I think, but there's like a line in the song that says, I don't want to leave a legacy. I don't care about my legacy. Only Jesus. I only want people to see Jesus. I get what they're saying, but that is not what we're here for. We want to leave a legacy of godliness to the next generations. We want to, it's not all about like money and stuff, but this is about who we are as people. And God has blessed us with all kinds of knowledge, all kinds of abilities, and shame on us if we take that and wrap that in ourselves. Now, I don't want to create a name for myself, but I want my children to honor me. I want my children's children to honor me and remember that, hey, we have a godly heritage here. This is a good thing. So this phase it will show how well you have done or how well you didn't do, which is all right. I mean, God is good and grace is good, but you can look back at the fruit of your labors if you have been a Christian your whole life. You've been serving Christ your whole life. This can be very rewarding. If you haven't been serving Christ your whole life, or you've made a lot of mistakes, it's not going to be as rewarding, but Christ can redeem those things, and it's not over. That's why your place is very important at this point. If you have messed up at this phase, guess what? You have grandchildren that you can influence. Now, they may not want to hear from you, but guess what? You still have influence. You can say a lot of good things here. So hopefully you have a bunch of wisdom to give. However,
well, before you go on to the next thing, I know we're going to get into like grandparenting and that kind of thing, and this isn't in the notes either. Sorry. Okay. But I was wondering if you want to say something about retirement, because I know that in the world, at least, that's, we save up for this point so that we can retire. So you have your retirement fund so that when you get to 65 or whatever age it is, you can go and live your fun life and travel and do whatever that is.
Yes. So if you're talking about the American way of retirement, I'm not really all for that. Retiring, going to Florida, moving away from family, and just living your perfect life now. And so that's not like what we're here to do, is just spend our last days enjoying ourselves at the beach somewhere or wherever. That's a time where we should be closer to family, mainly because they can take care of you. I mean, honestly. Yeah. And you can pour into their lives. You're here for just a little bit longer. Why wouldn't you want to be closer to them? Now, I'm all for retirement. Now, when I say that, the job that God has given you, if it isn't something that can be done until you're dead, which most of us probably isn't going to be that. Right. Most of us have a trade or something that eventually we get old and we just can't do it anymore, or we just don't want to. It's just too much on our back or legs or whatever. And so we want to retire and do things that are better. more better.
More
right?
better.
Yeah, more better.
All right.
We're going to go with that. That are more effective. Like I was just talking to my old boss there. He is working at a church, and he's a little bit older, and he's in this stage, and they just ordained him so he can be a minister. Now, he said he doesn't need a title to do all this. He was already a minister, but they recognized him as a leader and someone that wants to do this particular thing, and he's got a very specific thing that he's going to be helping the church with older people and people that have dealt with loss.
So you're saying he's going to continue working, but just not doing the same work that he had been doing?
Yeah, he said, well, the work is actually his actual business is going to lessen, and that is going to increase. Yeah. And that's the way it should be. You should be able to, the things that you want to do to give back to your society, whether it's in politics, which I'm not a huge fan of, but this is the time of life where you have the time. Your kids are not, a big need in your life anymore. They're doing their life. They still need you, but not in that way where they're constantly around you. You have a little bit more freedom to be the leadership position. So the retirement looks like you can be more of a statesman, as I said earlier, and more of a church leader in certain ways, which we'll get into. That society does not honor this anymore. We don't look to the older people anymore. We look to the younger. We've got it flipped around. We flipped the script a little bit, and that needs to change a little bit. So anyway.
So getting into the grandparenting thing, what does American culture teach about grandparents? What would you say to that?
Well, that's a good question. What does American culture teach about grandparents? Not much. We relegate them to the back, and we don't honor them anymore. We actually have retirement centers that have all been created. This is a very new concept. The retirement centers within the last 150 years. In the whole history of the world, this has not been the plan for watching loved ones die and go on. This is not. This is a very new concept, and we're creating new cities even. I mean, the Grimms live over there by the Villages, which is completely a city of
old people.
Yeah, that's one way.
Yeah.
So,
well, even in the church, we have separate places to go. The Golden Eagles and it's like, let's keep all them away from us.
Do definitely separate. But what did you write here? You wanted to read this?
This says, usually grandparents in the U.S. and U.K. step into their grandchildren's lives when they are needed and called upon, called the non-interference approach. While grandparents in countries such as Asia and Africa are so direct and active in their grandchild's lives that they are considered the two additional sets of parents. They're very involved in those other countries, whereas here, only if we need you. We'll let you know.
The Western mindset is get them out of our way as quickly as possible. And where the Asian cultures and the African cultures, of course, the African cultures, they don't live to like 55, but they do honor. Look at the Asian cultures; they honor their elders way more than we do in the West.
Yeah.
The West tends to chew them up, spit them out, and be like, thank you, but no thank you. And
we appreciate you around if you can give me money or help me with my kid or something. But if you're not going to be there to help me when I need you, then how about you stay away? Yeah,
go retire, old man. We even have terms that okay, boomer, like our young people today are so disrespectful of the previous generations. It's pathetic. But here are the things that most Americans and even Christian Americans want from grandparents. Now, I'm not saying these are good, but you're going to kind of question and go, well, that sounds all right, right? It might sound all right because this is what we do. Yeah. This is the thing that we do. So like we were talking about earlier, the non-interference. If you haven't heard, there's like 3. Sarah was looking online for these words and that people use. And I guess this is one of the big words is the non-interference, which is
basically we don't want our parents to step in and tell us how to live our lives, how to raise our kids, how to do whatever. It's, again, we'll call on you when we need you, but if we don't call on you, you let us be and let us do our thing.
And this is actually very much encouraged in our society, in our culture. We actually push this. We're like, no, grandparents shouldn't step in. Of course, nowadays they are raising some of our kids.
Yeah.
But no. It's now your time to do the stuff. Let us go retire on the beach now. We don't need to be a part of your life. We're not here to dictate, and that sounds good in certain ways. Like,
because we feel like we want to, like we had talked about before, you create a godly culture. So I want to create that godly culture in our home. We talk about it. So my parents could stay out of that, like let us do our thing. We want to, teach our kids these ways, which, of course, that sounds really good, right?
Yeah, it is a mix, and we'll get into that in just a second here, but it is a mix, and we'll unpack that in a little bit here, but the emotional dependence is the second thing. The emotional dependence.
Independence.
Independence. Emotional independence. Now, what is the difference between that and non-interference?
I would say that's kind of similar, but basically just where we want to get to a place where we don't need them. We don't really rely on them. We've got this. We know what to do. And so you can just, again...
We don't need mommy and daddy.
Right.
Now, you might say, well, isn't that what's supposed to happen? Well, if you're a Bible believer, no, that's not what's supposed to happen. Your parents are still supposed to be in your life. Elders in your life are very important.
Yeah.
The Bible makes a very big distinction about elders and more mature people, more mature believers. Your parents are a big influence in your life. It's only the Western mindset that has changed some of that. And so we isn't mom and dad getting out of our business and not telling us what to do? Now, we're not telling them to tell you what to do. There's a big difference there.
Yeah.
But for them to be involved in your life, this is a big world. Look at the rest of the cultures around the world. The West is the only one that treats their elders this poorly. Yeah. And you wonder why they hate their kids and they hate their grandkids. And every time we had a little family get together, it was my great grandmother was always there, sitting in her little corner, and they would try to honor her, but I don't know about my family, how much honoring they did. She just had her one beer, and she just drank her one beer. And I was like, Grandma, she's like 95 years old.
Wow.
But anyway, the last one, the third thing is the personal autonomy. Now, these are all very much close to each other. Yeah. What's the personal autonomy?
Pretty much, I think that's like I stand on my own. I mean, it's kind of, they're all
total independence.
Very related. Yeah,
right.
Totally independent. So I'm on my own. I've got this, and I don't need anything. And I can function completely independent of everybody else, especially my parents.
Well, and maybe we'll talk about this on another podcast. This one really gets me going, is the independence part. The Bible does not teach that we're that independent. Like, we are independent beings, but America was founded on independence, and we are go-getters, and let's do it. The Bible does not teach that. We are very dependent on one another. I'm dependent on you. I'm dependent on God. I'm dependent on the church. I'm dependent on society. There's a lot of things that we are dependent on. And this whole move to independence, I can do everything. I'm going to go raise my own feed, my own corn, and then I'm going to grind it and make my own bread, and then I'm going to eat my own bread, and I don't share with anybody. God didn't design us to be islands. We are created to be connected to people. We are a fellowship of believers. That's kind of the ministry right here, fellowship of believers. But the church is interconnected with their lives. I know we did a webinar, not a webinar, I don't know what you want to call it, a video conference, talking about Afghanistan, people coming into America, and there was a church that was wanting to get involved and maybe helping out, and we found out about it, so we were going to check in on it, and we were watching the video conference. And what was one of the things that they were saying about the Afghan people that were they were shocked when they came over to America?
Because they found that Americans, they live pretty much on their own. They lock their doors. They don't have to do with their neighbors, the people around them, the community. They live on their own and leave people alone.
Right. And you look around in other societies, they're not like that. Right. Now, you might say, well, in our society, do you want to be that close to your neighbors? I don't know.
Depends on your neighbors.
That's right. I don't know. These aren't all easy things. By the way, this is not going to change overnight. This is where we are. I don't know if anybody has a perfect situation. Grandparents are relegated to the back room. In fact, yours lived with us for a while, and they decided to...
Parents.
Your parents, yeah, right. Not your grandparents.
Right.
But your parents, our kids' grandparents, lived with us until they decided to move away, which is a whole other issue. But anyway...
well, grandparents are, in today's society, they're viewed as extras. They're non-essential. They're just, hey, it's cool if they can be around. It's cool if we can see them, but no big deal.
Don't get in our life.
Yeah. pretty much.
Especially if they disagree. And I find that this happens a lot, especially in Christian lives, where we feel like the grandparents are trying to subvert our authority.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of people see that grandparents overstep where they give candy to your kids and you say no candy. They bring a bunch of noisy toys and you say, we don't want all the battery stuff. We don't want them, and they always...
We don't let them watch TV, but they go to grandma's house and...
Exactly.
Well, for one, we don't just send them over to grandma's house, right? We've never just sent our kids. They never spent the night at grandma and grandpa's house. My parents, her parents... And we actually have a good relationship with our parents.
Right.
So it's not like we can't stand our parents. No, we actually work well together, but we still, our kids are that important that we're not just going to, we had to send boundaries. We honor them. We want to respect them. We want them to be a part of our kids' lives. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they can't be telling us what to do. Now, that is the problem here in this phase, that the general manager, I know it kind of doesn't fit the sports theme because the sports theme, they can tell you what to do. But in real life here, they're not to tell you how to live. They are to guide. They're to give advice. They are to show their wisdom. And if they can, by the way, if your parents can undo your kids' training in a weekend, then you have failed as a parent, honestly. I mean, you have hours with them, and you have days and weeks and months with them, and they spend a weekend with their grandparents watching something they shouldn't have, I don't know, or, they talk about boyfriend-girlfriend relationships when you don't want to talk about that right now. They talk about, dress styles that you don't want, music. I don't know whatever issues that maybe parents, grandparents bring up. Right. But if they can undo all that, you have to learn to be able to communicate with your parents. If your way of communicating with your parents is just shutting them out and saying, no, you have to be able to have those discussions. Almost in a marriage, sometimes there's an issue that you have to talk about. If you don't talk about it, it's going to blow up eventually. Right. So you can't be afraid of confrontation. Just do it in love, but you have to be firm and you have to try to understand them and honor them and be creative and say, well, how about you come over to our house where we control the atmosphere a little. We want you to spend times with our kids. And at the end of the day, there might be a time where you just have to separate. If they are being that big of jerks, where they're not honoring anything that you say, then maybe you just have to have that say, look, you can't be with us until you can listen to us, and it's unfortunate it has to be that way, but society has made grandparents almost be like that because we have stopped honoring them years ago. We have stopped letting them be in our lives. If they were already in your lives on a day-to-day basis, it wouldn't be such a hard thing to do. So anyway, what are some more examples? You already covered this one right here, babe. You covered that one. The rules of the grandparents about being too with the sweets, and they just want to be the fun person, Right.
And people complain because grandparents, they come at whatever time and they make you feel bad because, they want to spend time with the kids. And sometimes it's at times where you have other things in mind that you want to do. So just in society, that's kind of some of the stereotypes of grandparents is they step in and interrupt your life. And so we feel like, they're old, they don't know what's going on anymore. So let's just get them out of our lives. And that seems to be pretty common out there.
Now, we're very fortunate. We don't have many problems with our parents.
No.
So we have worked. We've had some issues with your parents early on because we lived really close to each other. But we talked about those things. We worked them out, and they understand where we were coming from. We are trying to honor them and letting the kids still be part of their lives, and they are. They were, and now they're in Wisconsin. Yeah. So it's hard to be a part of their lives. Yeah. But, grandparents can disagree with their parenting style, their discipline styles, and all kinds of things. And let's be honest, some of us Christians have crazy ideas. So that's why they might be concerned. And they're like, well, they're not going to have a normal life. Well, until society changes, that's the fact that we're not going to have a normal life. This is... You're going to have to understand we want your influence in our life, but let it be a godly influence. And if they can't understand that, that's unfortunate because if the church has so put down the older people, they feel like they're nothing anyways. Yeah. So if they felt like they were to give wisdom, then they would sit there and give wisdom, but they don't, because we don't include them in our lives. Yeah. We don't want them around us. And so, like I said, if you lived around them a little bit more like they used to in the good old days, you're just used to them being around. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to listen to them. But you know what? My kids, they better listen to your parents and my parents if they tell them something to do. If they don't, they're going to get in trouble. Yeah. Because my parents or your parents aren't telling them to do something crazy. Right. Well, maybe your dad, but no, okay. But a different kind of crazy. No, yeah. It's fine.
Well, and people do complain about the difference in parenting styles, because like I want to spank or I don't want to spank, and my parents think something else. Like that's something that you hear. But I think sometimes, you got to give these grandparents some credit, because some of these kids are crazy. So yes. I'm like, what your parenting styles? I'm like, I would want to step in too and say, hey, you're not doing this right.
Yeah, they have concern too. You have to realize that there are two sides of the story. And yes, they don't need to be controlling, and they don't need to be in on it as much as you are, right. But they do care. And maybe they care too much, and they want to take over and tell you how to raise kids because you don't know what you're doing. Right. But they need to learn, and this is what phase they are in. So if you are in that phase, if you're 60 to 80 and you're watching or listening, congratulations on figuring out YouTube, or a podcast for that matter. But if you are listening, you have to realize this is your phase of advice. You are giving advice. You are helping out. Helping does not mean telling them what to do and bugging them to death until they do what you say. You need to be very persuasive. You need to tell stories, tell about your life. We younger people actually forget that you guys were actually young at some point. Right. It's an amazing thing that, wow, grandma and grandpa were 10 at one point. Yeah, they don't remember, but they were.
That's when the world was black and white.
That's right. That's when the world was black and white, according to my kids. Right. So anyway.
Well, so a lot of people do have problems with a lot of people our age have problems with parents. And so we try to push them out. We try to limit their time with the kids. And you kind of touched on this earlier, but what do you suggest if we do have problems, if I feel like my parents are overstepping their bounds and I want to separate? Is that fine? Is that not? Because I know you talk about honoring. We want to honor.
Right.
But
it's not really fine, but sometimes it may happen where you need to separate. You need to go your separate ways. But I would beg that you try and work things out. Like I said earlier, if by them coming to your house and you're surrounded by whatever way lifestyle you want to live, and they can undo that in a couple-hour visit, then what have you been doing with your child? If they can introduce, some rock star or some rapper or some TV show that intrigues them to the point that they can think of nothing else and they can sneak around and disobey you, then you have failed as a parent. My goodness. We have actually talked about, I might get in trouble here. We have actually talked about my parents and your parents about different things that we may disagree on with our kids. And we tell them that we want to respect my parents and your parents, but we disagree on these things and you don't do these things when, they may ask you to do it, but don't do them. And they honor us in that. And I know that my parents and your parents, and they're not trying, but they want to have fun too. I remember one time we went to my mom's house, and I really felt bad, my parents' house, and my mom got a movie, Frozen, I think it was. No, it was Brave. Brave. Yeah. It was a Disney movie called Brave, which we have never seen. So I gave away the rest of the story, I guess. And so she was excited, like, oh, you guys want to come sit down and watch this? And I was like, Mom, we're not watching that. We're not going to watch it.
Well, it was a kid's movie, and she was really excited because all of her grandkids, they're all here. And so she went and bought it, and we did feel bad.
I did feel bad. But what we did was just that we're not going to really watch that. It's not what we do. And my mom was like, oh, okay. And I think we ended up making cookies. And then we chose something to watch that we approved of. And we watched that together, and it was fine. It was so you have to figure out ways to. All my mom was trying to do was just be a part and wanting to do something fun together, and but knowing that I wasn't trying to she's trying to get us to watch Disney, and we're not trying to do that right now, and how dare her, woman power, Brave, or who I don't even know the movie. No, I thought, what, my mom's heart was to be a part and be a blessing to us, and not a curse. And so I need to turn that and be like, no, Mom, we're not going to watch that, but how about we watch this?
Right.
And we can make cookies, and she was fine. And we moved on, and life was good. So anyway, I hope that answers your question there.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so now what?
Well, so we've talked a little bit about American culture and what we do with what happens with grandparents and how we treat them and some of the problems with grandparents. But what does the Bible have to say about grandparents, and what is the right way to treat them?
Well, the Bible has a lot to say on children's children. If you look up children's children and sons of sons, and they don't actually have the word grandparents in there. I was talking to a guy with this at the Shindig in Florida, and he's a family man. You know, he loves the family, and he was talking about there's only fathers, and there's fathers of fathers, and there's no grandparents in the Bible. But we understand what a father of a father is, right? But you never stop being a father. That was the point. And even at 65, 70, you're still a father. That's a position that you should take seriously. And your kids still need direction. They still need help on things. They still need advice on some things. I know they think they got it all together, but they need some general manager advice. And so it becomes very important. So here's a verse. We came up with one. There was a few that we could come up with, but one right here is Deuteronomy 4:9.
Says, only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life. But teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons. So we know that this does actually happen with the growing number of grandparents that are raising their grandchildren, which is unfortunate, but it does happen. So obviously they're teaching their sons and their sons' sons, and that's, a different issue. But so this is something that you don't hear, though, in our conservative circles in the homeschooling movement. It doesn't seem to be encouraged that you teach your grandchildren. So
no, and it's a shame. It's not the grandparents' role to raise the kids,
right?
And it's not their role necessarily to be the main teacher.
Right.
But just like in church, you have a body of believers. Inside that church, you have elders. You have older people, you have mature people, and you have people who know a little bit more. Well, they're there to help disciple. Now, it's not their job to disciple my kids.
Right.
But by the nature of them being part of church and being there, they are helping disciple my kids. Yeah. Same way in the grandparenting phase, that you have an opportunity to sit with the kids and tell them stories of when you were a kid. Tell them about your faith, about what God was doing in your life. Now, this is assuming that you're a Christian, by the way.
Right.
And if not, you still can tell people. Kids are interested in your life, not just Bible stories, and who you are as a person, and things that you learned and things you did wrong. And I'm like, yep, I shouldn't have done those things. And but this is who I am now. Or things like, are the good things, you did as a kid. And when I did this, we did. No way, Grandpa, they didn't even have color back then, or whatever.
Well, kids love to hear stories. So, anytime anybody wants to tell them stories, older people have a lot of stories because they've lived a lot of life. So that's always interesting.
And to be an influence on anybody's life, but especially your family, your kids, and then your kids' kids, is a real big thing. And like in the Bible verse said here, that you don't forget. How many times do we forget things? We forget about our history. We forget about where we came from. We forget about the important things in life. Grandparents tend to bring us back to that because they have nothing to do but to remember the good times. Because they're about to go out. And so they want to remember those good times and tell the grandkids about the good times, and to help encourage their kids and explain what's going to happen to them when they start losing their eyesight and when they can't hear anymore. What was that? So anyway, did that help you answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay, so what about this one, babe? We have Proverbs 17:6.
Says, children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers.
Absolutely.
Makes me think of the statesman.
Yeah, well,
like
exactly.
He's got a crown.
I'm not a big politician type guy. I don't like politics at all. But this is a good phase for that, honestly. This is, I think when you're trying to get into politics when you're 20 and 30, it's kind of foolish. Same thing with church leadership. I think it's kind of foolish. Now, you can do what you want, but I don't think that is the time of life. This is that time of life where you are in leadership, you have knowledge, you've gained in whatever place of work you are in, you've gained experience, you have skills you can use. This is the time to give back to society, church, family, and all that. So the children's throne are a crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers. Think about that. The glory of the children is their fathers. Fathers, you need to take your job very seriously. It's a very important thing for you. The children will glory in their father. It's not like how many people are like, oh man, I want to grow up just like my mom. No. Maybe daughter said that, but as boys, we grew up and be like, I want to be like my dad. Unless he ends up being a drunk and going to jail and all that, and then we want to be like our coach, or we want to be like, but we want to glory in something. And a father is their glory. They look up to their dad. They look up to him. He's supposed to be that rock. So children's children are a crown of old men. This is where you can look back and be like, look at the blessings that we have. We have raised our kids. I know my dad was saying this just Christmas time last year. The whole family was together. My side of the family, his side of the family. It was all together. All the kids, all the grandkids, everyone was together. And it was a good time. We actually enjoyed it. And he just looks back and he's like, look, all my kids are Christians. All my grandkids are doing well for the most part, And he was very happy at that. He was like, hey, this is a thing that children's children are crown. He was happy to wear that crown, I guess. So 2 Timothy 1:5.
When I call to remembrance the unfeigned faith that is in thee, which dwelt first in thy grandmother Lois and thy mother Eunice, and I am persuaded that in thee also.
So here we go. This was Timothy, right? And his grandmother must have spent some time with him and taught him the scriptures, or who knows, but it was a very, very big influence on his life. So even if you're a grandmother, you're like, oh, what can I do? A lot. You could raise up a Timothy.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how it's supposed to happen. The faith passes on. So
absolutely.
That's a beautiful picture of it right
absolutely.
there.
In normal Christianity, I know we always say in heaven there's no grandchildren. Basically what we're saying is you have to be born again. You can't just go to heaven because your mom and dad's a Christian. But in this world, this is the way that Christianity is worked, that you raise up in a godly home during that 0 to 20 phase. You learn about Christ, you learn about God, and then you live it yourself. Then you start your own family and you pass it on. These things should be passed on just like Deuteronomy 6. You pass these things on to your children. This is the way. This is how it goes.
This is the way. So then we have Proverbs 13:22 says, a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just.
Yeah, so this isn't just talking about money, but it is talking about money. I mean,
it does say wealth, so I mean, obviously it's part of it, but that inheritance, what else does that mean? What could that be?
Right, and this is what we were talking about, that song. I don't want to leave a legacy. Well, this is the legacy I want to leave. As a godly man, I want to pass on to my children, first and foremost, godly character and all the knowledge that I have, all my teaching that I can teach them. I want to pass that on to them so that they can pass it on to their kids. And even if they forget, guess what? I can be a part of their life, and I can watch the grandkids raise up, and I can encourage them also to be a part of that godly legacy that we have. The Charleston name should be a name of godliness and righteousness. And unfortunately, if you know my past, my biological side of the family, Charleston, who I call my mom and dad, my mom's my mom, but my dad is not that part of the family. The real Charlestons are a mess sometimes, and I don't really know them, but there's a lot of issues. There's not a very good legacy there. But when my dad brought me to church and we got saved, that changed our family tree forever. And now here I am, a preacher of righteousness. Now I'm bringing up kids unto the Lord, godly seed, and now they're born again now, and they want to pass that on to others and to their children. This is how it works. So this is the way. This is the way. So Exodus 10:2.
It says, "And that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son and of thy son's son what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that ye may know that I am the Lord."
Again, here the grandparents are telling the grandchildren of what God has done. This is very vital. Parents should be telling them.
Right.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get caught up in the day-to-day life. And, grandparents are the ones that can slow things down. You know why? Because they're slow. And they're not going to move very fast. But they can be the ones who are like, "Here, sit down with me, little whippersnapper, for just a little bit. And let me tell you some things." It reminds me of the story of Joshua when he crossed the Jordan. What did they do? Okay, I'll tell you what they did. They put boulders, rocks, 12 rocks as a memorial to remind them.
Right.
We do a lot of things to remind ourselves. We do ice cream night to remind ourselves, and because it's good. And we do a lot of things to remind ourselves. What do we have communion for? Is to remind ourselves and remind Christ too. But that's a whole other subject. So anyway.
All right, so we talked a lot about grandparents and what the Bible has to say about grandparents and what they should do. But what about another part of this final stage, the general manager part?
What about ministry?
Yeah, what about ministry? So what should we expect?
What should we expect during this phase for ministry?
Yeah.
So, well, first, before we go there, let me go back a little bit and talk about the culture a little bit and how we disregard the parents, the grandparents in our culture. It is a shame that we do push them back. We don't include them in our lives. We don't because they're old. They don't know any better.
We don't value what they have.
We don't value. They have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
In America, we don't value that. We value results, and the young can do that real quickly. Well, guess what? That has crept into our church. The churches of America are so subdivided, it's ridiculous. It's no longer called the family of God. It is strictly an institution, and it is program-based to the extreme, and we have children's church. First we have the nursery, then we have children's church, then we have the phases of life right there in our church. And it's supposed to be the family of God, where the family gets together. And we have the young people having their own little thing, the children's church. Then we have the youth group. Yep. Then college and career, which they're kind of joining the youth group now because, well, that's extending. Then we have just the regular people who are going to church. If you go to a normal church, there are some churches who will not let kids go into the sanctuary. Yeah. They may make them go into the special because we can't have the preacher. We can't have the word of God being the message
disrupted by
crying or whatever. I mean, give me a break. This is called life. The kids are kind of going to make noise. Obviously, you take them out if they're going to be really loud and annoying. But this is a family. Families aren't always clean cut. And guess what? Your little message that you preach isn't like the most important thing of the week. We as a leader, what is more important is your example and the wisdom that you have that you can share. And it doesn't have to be such a special message on Sunday that you've taken 20 hours to prepare for, and then it's that. I'm like, come on. It should be a lot better if you spent that much time on it. But anyway, in ministry, this is the time at 60 and 80 that in the American churches we don't appreciate. We send them off to the Golden Eagles classes, and most of the time we just have old churches. We just have churches full of old people. And this should be the time where they are the elders. Now, the Bible talks about elders. They talk about being bishops, and they talk about church leadership. And this is the time, if you're not a leader already, like we talked about last week in the coaching phase, you should be working towards that. You should be in some form of leadership, and maybe not completely. But by the time you are in 60 in the 80 range of this phase of life, you better be a leader. You better be in leadership of some sort. Shame on you unless you got saved late in life. You've had plenty of time to study your Bible. You've had plenty of time to pray. You've had plenty of time to counsel people. What are you doing? You should be helping people. This is your time to step up and be like, I have time. I was joking with a friend of mine who had a medical issue, and now he's retired. He can't really do much anymore. And I was joking with him, and I said, well, it's a good thing that you're older now. You have plenty of time that you can just pray now. And he was like, well, yeah, thank you. But and that's really true. If you don't have anything else to do, you can always pray. The biggest prayer warriors should be in this phase because they do have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they're not working as much. They can't work as much. Or they're just as feeble. They don't want to sound like they're all feeble, but as you get later, you can't do much.
Right.
But you can always pray.
Yeah.
Praying grandma is a huge thing. A praying grandfather is a huge thing. This is the time of life where you can definitely be praying. You can be giving advice. You can help people. There are young people getting married that need to know what they're about to do and how they can. What can I do to help my marriage? Well, I've been married 50 years. Not me personally, but if you're at this phase and you've been married 50 plus years, you probably have something to say.
Yeah.
You can probably help some people over here. So I don't know. That's in ministry, you are definitely gathering people together. You're the go-getter of gathering. You may not be on the streets as much, knocking on doors, passing out tracts. Even though I know some older people that this is their time, they're doing a lot more of that because they have the time to do it.
Yeah.
And they're in the earlier part of this phase. But by the time you're 80, I mean, realistically, I don't know how. Maybe you can get one of those scooters and just keep going.
Right.
Hey, and don't give up, man. Keep going. So anyway, any other questions, babe?
I don't think so. I
No,
think
okay.
that's good.
Yep. That is the phases of life, the seasons of life. I hope everyone enjoyed this. I enjoyed putting it together. I know you put it together mostly. So this was fun to do. There are so many things. If we can get the right phases down and do what we're supposed to do in the right order, life goes a little bit easier. I don't have to try to worry about counseling everybody when I'm 18. And I don't have to worry about trying to go win the world for Jesus when I'm 80. And so sometimes we get these things all confused and we don't understand where we are in our season of life. And this is very general. It's not very specific, but I hope you guys understood where we were coming from. So,
well, and for this one, I feel like the big thing, I mean, obviously, if you're in the 60 to 80, look to see what you can do to give and to help people under you. But I feel like the bigger thing is people our age and people a little younger than us that are just getting married to see the value in these older people and to not try to push them out of their lives, but to say, hey, God has these people in my life, my parents, my grandparents, whoever the older people are in your life, and to actually seek counsel from them and to see the value in them and not just push them aside because they're not hip and they're not in with whatever's going on because they have a lot to offer.
Absolutely. And to honor the older people. If you have difficulties with your parents or other older people in your life, make it work. Figure it out. It's a shame. The one thing I wish we had more of in our fellowship was older people. Yeah. Now, Craig might take exception to that, but he's getting there. Bart might too. I don't know. But we don't really have the 80-year-old person that's been through the battles for many, many years. And hopefully we can change that. And we can stay consistent in what we're doing. We can get new blood in and old blood. It should be all mixed up. It should be old, young, new. That's the body of Christ. It's a family. It's not just all old people or all young people. You can't have all newbies and have all oldies. You got to have a mix here. Someone's got to train the noobs, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, well, thank you for listening. And I don't know what we'll be doing next week, but maybe a new series. I don't know. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Mike Charleston Podcast.